I guess I should start by saying that I never thought my life would end up like this. When I married Stephanie, I was convinced we were going to grow old together. We had that kind of love people write songs about, at least that's what I believed. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. We had plans. A future. Maybe even kids someday. But something changed. Started small, like most things do. She used to text me during the day, little things, memes, jokes, asking what I wanted for dinner. Then one day it just stopped. I'd text her, and hours would pass before I got a reply. Sorry, I was busy. That was the first excuse. Then came the late nights. At first it was work, meetings running long, last-minute deadlines. Then it became girls' nights. I didn't question it at first. I wanted her to have her freedom, her space. But it was the way she acted when she got home. Like she didn't want to be near me. The intimacy faded too. I told myself it was stress, that she was just going through something. But deep down I felt it. That gut feeling that something was wrong. I started noticing little things. A new perfume way too expensive for her usual taste. Clothes I'd never seen before. She started going to the gym more often, even though she always said she hated working out. And then there was the phone. That was the biggest red flag. Stephanie had always been the type to leave her phone lying around. She wasn't glued to it, not like some people. But suddenly, that thing was always in her hand, face down when she wasn't using it. She'd get a message, glance at it and smile, but she wouldn't reply if I was watching. Sometimes she'd step out of the room to answer a call. When I asked who it was, she'd shrug. Just a friend. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday night when everything finally cracked wide open. Stephanie had told me she was going out with her friends. Same routine as always. Kiss on the cheek. A distracted "don't wait up." And she was out the door. But this time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her location. We had shared locations on our phones years ago for emergencies. She probably forgot. My stomach was already twisting before I even opened the app. Maybe I'd find out she was exactly where she said she'd be. Maybe I'd feel guilty for doubting her. But she wasn't at the bar she mentioned. She was across town, at some house I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I zoomed in, hoping maybe it was just some mistake, some glitch. But no, she was there. I told myself I wasn't the kind of guy who drove across town to check on his wife. I wasn't the kind of guy who assumed the worst. But I did. The drive was a blur. My thoughts were racing. My hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. By the time I pulled up outside the house, I felt sick. The place was huge, the kind of house that belonged to someone who had money. Her car was right there in the driveway. I sat there for a moment, trying to tell myself there was some logical explanation. Maybe she was here for a work thing. Maybe she really was with her friends, and they had stopped by for some reason. Then I saw the shadow in the window. A man. Older. And then her. She was laughing. That was the moment something inside me broke. I didn't go up to the door. I didn't need to. The truth was right in front of me. Instead, I turned my car around and drove home in silence, my mind a mess of rage and heartbreak. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in our bed, the bed we shared, staring at the ceiling, waiting for her to come home. When she finally did, at almost 3 in the morning, she was humming to herself. She didn't even notice I was awake. I listened to her go through her routine, dropping her bag, slipping off her shoes, walking into the bathroom. When she climbed into bed next to me, she smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. I didn't say a word, but I knew what I had to do. The next morning I woke up before she did. Or maybe I never really slept. Either way, I was already packed by the time she stirred. A single suitcase by the door, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Where are you going?" Her voice was groggy, like she wasn't fully awake yet. I could have exploded right then. I could have screamed, thrown accusations in her face, demanded answers she'd never give me honestly. Instead, I kept my voice calm. "I know, Stephanie." Her whole body went stiff. "Know what?" That was when I finally looked at her. really looked at her. Her hair was still a little messy from sleep. She wasn't wearing makeup, just an old t-shirt of mine that she used to love. And for a second, just a second, I saw the woman I fell in love with. The woman who used to hold my hand during movies and make me breakfast on Sundays. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and reality came crashing back. I didn't need to see the name on the screen. She saw the way my eyes flicked toward it. Panic flashed across her face. "It's not what you think." I laughed. Actually laughed. I don't know why it wasn't funny, but the sheer audacity of it, acting like I was the one making something out of nothing, it was unreal. "Stephanie, I saw you." My voice was quieter this time. That made it worse somehow. "I saw you with him." Her face drained of color. For a moment I thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she went on autopilot damage control mode. "Listen, we need to talk about this." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "There's nothing to talk about. It's not serious," she rushed out. "It was a mistake, okay? Just a stupid mistake. A mistake." Like she tripped and fell into another man's bed. Like she hadn't been sneaking around for months, lying to my face while I stayed up at night wondering what I was doing wrong. "Who is he?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Silence. That told me everything. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "I don't even care. Not anymore." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I picked up my suitcase. "I'm leaving." That's when she snapped. "You're just going to walk away?" She spat, like she was the one who had the right to be angry. "After everything we've been through?" I turned to her, and for the first time in months, I felt nothing. "After everything we've been through?" I echoed. "Stephanie, you threw us away the second you decided I wasn't enough for you." Her mouth opened and closed, like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just stood there, frozen in place, as I walked out the door. She didn't follow me. She didn't stop me. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. I drove straight to a hotel. I didn't tell anyone where I was, didn't call or text. Just booked a room, threw my suitcase on the bed, and sat there, staring at the wall. I should have felt relieved, free even. Instead, all I felt was this weird, crushing emptiness. I replayed everything in my head. The late nights, the distant looks, the half-hearted kisses. All the little things I ignored because I wanted to believe we were still okay. We weren't, and we hadn't been for a long time. It wasn't until the next morning that I finally checked my phone. 10 missed calls from Stephanie. A handful of texts, all variations of, "Please, we need to talk. I messed up, but we can fix this. You're overreacting. Don't throw away our marriage over one mistake." One mistake. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I turned it off and walked downstairs to find coffee. That was when I got the call that pushed me over the edge. Not from Stephanie. From her mom. I stared at the screen for a second before answering. "Hello. What are you doing?" Her voice was sharp, like I was some rebellious teenager. "Stephanie told me you left. You can't just walk away from your wife like this." I actually laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. "She told you everything?" I asked. "She told me enough." Translation. She gave them the version where she's the victim. I should have seen it coming. Her family always did this, swept things under the rug, avoided ugly truths. "She cheated on me," I said flatly. "That's why I left." Pause. Then, "Marriage isn't always easy, sweetheart. People make mistakes." I gripped the phone tighter. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Over and over again. Her tone turned syrupy, condescending. "You're just upset. Take a few days to cool off, then go home and work things out like adults." Like adults. Like a man should just swallow his pride and pretend his wife hadn't been sleeping with someone else. No, my voice was steel. "I'm done." "You don't mean that." "Ido." She exhaled, frustrated. "Look, she made a mistake, but you're being selfish. You made vows. You don't just give up on family because things get hard." That was the moment I realized they didn't care. Not about what Stephanie did. Not about what I was feeling. They just didn't want the embarrassment of a failed marriage in the family. I let out a breath and said something I should have said a long time ago. I'm not part of your family anymore. Then I hung up. The moment I hung up, I knew this wasn't over. Stephanie's family wasn't the type to let things go, especially when it came to appearances. A divorce? That wasn't just my business, it was their problem now. And they weren't about to let that happen quietly. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Stephanie, her mom, her sister, even a couple of our mutual friends, all parroting the same nonsense. Come on, man, she's devastated. You don't just leave someone over one mistake. She still loves you. You owe it to her to try. Oh, that word stuck in my head like a thorn. I owed her loyalty while she was screwing another man. I owed her patience while she lied to my face. I owed her another chance after she shattered everything we built. No, I owed myself better than this. But they weren't done yet. That evening, there was a knock at my hotel door. I already knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Stephanie. She was standing there in jeans and an oversized hoodie, like she wanted to look smaller, more vulnerable. Like the woman I had married, not the one who had spent months sneaking around behind my back. I almost didn't open the door, but a part of me wanted to hear it, to hear whatever excuse, whatever manipulation she had come up with. So I let her in. She stepped inside cautiously, like I was a bomb that might go off at any second. You didn't answer my calls. Didn't have anything to say. She flinched, like I had hurt her. I screwed up, she admitted, voice small. But don't you think we should at least talk about it? I stared at her, waiting. She shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. She sighed. I got lost, okay? I got caught up in something stupid, and I hate myself for it. But I love you. I never stopped loving you. I almost laughed. Love? She didn't love me. She loved the stability I gave her. The life we built together. The safety. Who is he? I asked again. She hesitated. Then, finally, his name is Robert. The name meant nothing to me. But what she said next, that was the knife to the gut. He's my boss. I let out a slow, bitter breath. Of course. A wealthy, older man. A man with power. A man who could give her things I couldn't. Did he promise you something? I asked. A promotion? Money? A better life. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't like that. I gave her a look that said, don't lie to me. She swallowed hard. At first, maybe, but then it just happened. It just happened. She actually said that. I turned away, running a hand down my face. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but it wasn't even about her cheating anymore. It was the way she refused to own up to it. The way she still wanted to rewrite the story so she wasn't the villain. You need to leave, Stephanie. Her breath hitched. Please don't do this. I shook my head. It's already done. I walked to the door and opened it. She stood there for a moment, like she thought I might change my mind, like maybe if she cried hard enough, begged long enough, I'd take her back. But I wasn't that man anymore. She stepped out into the hallway, wiping her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't respond, just closed the door behind her. I had nothing left to say. I filed for divorce the next morning.
No hesitaste.
No second thoughts. Just walked into the lawyer's office, signed the paperwork, and set the entire process in motion. Stephanie hadn't texted or called since I shut the door in her face. Maybe she finally realized there was nothing left to save. But her family? Oh, they weren't done. It started with her mom. A long, guilt-tripping voicemail about how marriage is about forgiveness and how I was breaking Stephanie's heart by rushing into a divorce. Then her sister jumped in. Are you seriously throwing away 8 years over one bad decision? One bad decision. That's what they all called it. Not betrayal. Not months of lying. Not sneaking around behind my back. Just a bad decision. Like she accidentally sent a text to the wrong person. Like she tripped and landed in another man's bed. They wanted me to forgive, to move past it, to go home and fix my marriage. And I think the worst part? None of them, not one of them, asked if I was okay. Not one person stopped to consider how it felt to be in my position. I was the one who had been betrayed. I was the one who had my heart ripped out. I was the one who had been lied to, manipulated, humiliated. But all they saw was her pain. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about saving the marriage. This was about saving her reputation. A divorce meant people would talk. It meant family gatherings where people would ask uncomfortable questions. It meant her mom having to admit that her perfect little daughter wasn't so perfect after all. It had nothing to do with me, so I stopped responding. Blocked her family. Blocked mutual friends who tried to push me into reconciliation. I focused on myself. And when Stephanie finally texted me, after nearly 2 weeks of silence, I barely even reacted. "Stephanie, can we meet? Just to talk." I left her on read, because I was done being the good guy. The day she finally broke down and showed up at my door was the day I knew, really knew, that I had won. It had been almost a month since I left. I'd moved into a new apartment, cut off the noise from her family, and started focusing on myself. The divorce was in motion, and I was finally feeling like I could breathe again. Then she knocked. I opened the door to find Stephanie standing there, looking nothing like the woman I used to know. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unkempt, and she was clutching the sleeves of her sweater like a child trying to make herself smaller. "Please," she whispered, "just talk to me." I didn't say anything, just crossed my arms and waited. She took that as permission to continue. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, voice cracking. "I don't know what to say to make you believe how sorry I am." I let out a slow breath. "That's the thing, Stephanie. You can't fix this." She looked like I had slapped her. "So that's it?" she asked, desperate. 8 years, just gone?" I shook my head. "You threw it away the moment you let him touch you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was lost, No." I cut her off. "You weren't lost. You made a choice. Repeatedly. And now you don't like the consequences." She sniffled, wiping at her face. "I miss you." I exhaled through my nose. "You miss what I gave you." Her silence told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about me. This was about the life I built, the security I gave her. And now that it was gone, she was scrambling to get it back. But she didn't miss me. She missed what I provided. I leaned against the doorframe. "How's Robert?" She flinched like I'd stabbed her. "I haven't spoken to him since." "Save it," I interrupted. "I don't care." Her breath hitched. I could tell she wanted to fight, to argue, to convince me that she still loved me. But I didn't need convincing. 'Cause I didn't love her anymore. Not the way I used to. Not after what she did. So I gave her one last look. One final moment to say whatever she needed to say. She swallowed hard. "Is there really no chance?" I met her gaze, steady and cold.
No.
A single tear slipped down her cheek. But I felt nothing. I stepped back, gripped the door, and said the last words I would ever say to her. "Goodbye, Stephanie." Then I closed the door. And for the first time in months I felt free. The divorce was finalized a few months later. I didn't look back. I didn't entertain her pleas. Didn't let her family guilt me into reconsidering. I put my foot down. I started hitting the gym. Focused on my career. Rebuilt my life from the ground up without her. Stephanie? She tried reaching out a few times, but I never responded. I heard through mutual friends that things didn't work out with Robert. Apparently, he had several women on the side. Karma. As for me, I'm good. Better than ever. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, the moment someone betrays you like that, they don't deserve a second chance. You walk away, and you never look back.